Well, we'll go ahead and get started. So today we're going to be going over primarily some communication tools. We're going to be focusing in on the emailing module on the website. We're also going to focus in on the system emails and when and how those go out and how we can manage them and track them. And then towards the end, we'll focus in on
Call.
the
Janini,
news articles. Those are going to be the kind of like way that we can share information with people that
I
they can
think we
go
had to
look at
do
the
our own because
module.
Tatisha wanted us
Um,
to do our own.
and then we can also focus in on how to share news articles on our home pages. So we can share those articles in a number of various places as well. So let's get started. We're going to go in and take a look at emailing. So I'm currently logged into the template site for the NIGP. I'm logged in as an administrator. Once you're logged in as an admin, you can always click on the control panel and that will take you to these controls. When we're talking about emailing, you're going to find that module under the communication tabs of the control panel. And you're going to find emailing under website modules. It should be the first module that shows up under website modules. When you click on emailing, it will take you into your emailing administration page. This is where you can look at your drafts and past sent emails, and you can kind of pick up where you left off on previous emails. You'll be presented with these two buttons. You'll have an add emailing button, and that's how you start a new draft email. You'll also have the configure button where you'll get a number of different settings. For the most part, there isn't a lot that you should have to come in here and manage. There may be things like going into the options to turn on the email share page. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But for the most part, once you kind of get into your website for the first time, or if you've been with your website for a while, there shouldn't be a lot that you have to configure unless you're turning on some advanced options. When we come to an emailing, we also have this search option where we can either fill in a search criteria for emails or drafts that we're looking for, and we can hit the search button. Normally, I don't even fill anything in here. I just land on this page, and if I'm looking for an email, I just hit search, and it'll show me all of the emails without any filtering on it. That's really useful because then you can see all of your emails. And most times, you're not looking for an email that was sent, a year ago. You're looking for an email that was sent last week, so it should be pretty close to the top. It's going to sort the emails by most recent. So the most recent emails will be at the top, and the further down you go, the farther back in time you go. So to start an emailing, let's go ahead and start with a fresh one. I'm going to hit this add emailing button, and it's going to take me to a new emailing page. When we're creating a blast emailing that we want to send to all of our members, or maybe even a subset of our members, we get kind of three basic areas to fill out. We have basic information. That's the first place that we have to customize. And you'll notice it's got this little red exclamation point. This is letting us know that we haven't configured that yet. Once we finish our basic information, that will turn green, letting us know that that's good to go. The next section we have to answer is who is this email going to? So we have our distribution list, and we have the option to either build a new distribution list or reuse one that we've used in the past. And then finally is the all important body of our email, where we have this little blank area here where we can drag elements over and craft an email. Once we've done all three of those, we can then move on to sending our email. But let's walk through each of those steps together. So if we come into our basic information, we have this little caret drop down that we can take a look at the preview. But instead of clicking on that, let's go over and click on the Edit Basics button. This is going to open up the Basics menu where we can then configure our email as the way we want it to go out. For category, for most people, the category and the checkbox below it shouldn't matter. You can gloss right over those for about 90% of the people that use Club Express. The only reason you would want to really stick to categorizing is if you do use what we call the view email page. And we'll talk about the view email page a little bit later on. But what the view email page is, it's just a web page on your site that will let people view emails that have been sent to them. So it's a way for them to access those emails instead of going to their inbox. Most people, when you're using the blast email tool, you really want to prioritize people seeing it in their email inbox. So they don't usually worry about the view email page. It's just an option that you can turn on. And the categories work the same way. So if you have separate categories, you can categorize them and they'll show up on the view email page in those categories. But the categories won't matter once they land in someone's inbox. So the category isn't going to show up in the email or anything like that. So if you're not using that view email page, then you can pretty
Oh
much
no.
leave all of your categories as default category and it won't really apply. It won't really matter. For the from address, this is the email address that it will look like this email is coming from. Right here, we've got our Ronnie's email, but we can change that to, we'll say Devin. We can say Devin at NIGP. Now, obviously, that's not a real email. So you want to be careful when you're setting up your from email address. I work for Club Express, not NIGP. So I can send it this way and it'll look to everyone who gets this email like the email was coming from Devin at NIGP.org. But when they try to reply to it, because it's not a real email, it's not going to work to reply to. What we're doing when we do that is Club Express wraps the email in kind of like some styly code in the background to make it look like it's coming from that address. If someone has an eagle eye, they can usually tell that, oh, this isn't actually coming from Devin at nigp.org. It's coming from the Club Express email server, and the server is just letting you know that this is the email address that it wants to look like it's coming from. The same is true for the from name. So you can also say this is coming from, Devin, or I can say it's coming from NIGP. You can put whatever name you want, and that's going to be the name that shows up in people's inboxes as the sender of the email. Some people always have concerns. They say, hey, what if someone sends an email and they make it look like it's coming from someone else? Can't that be abused? Technically, yes, but the system always tracks who was logged in and who created the email. So, there's no way to be sneaky about it. If I were to say, hey, Ronnie sent this email, it would say Devin created an email and sent it from Ronnie. So always keep that in mind when you're sending these emails, that it will track who actually made the email. For the timing of the email, we have the now option or the on this date option. If we choose now, it's obviously not right now. We haven't finished the email yet. But what that means is once we finish those three steps I was talking about, the basic information, the distribution list, and the body, and we say it's ready to go, that is when the email will be sent. It'll immediately be queued and put in the email server to be sent to everyone that minute. If we choose on this date and time, it will schedule the email, and I can go ahead and build this email ahead of time and not have to worry about it, and it'll automatically go out on a future date. So I can say I want to go ahead and, do my email building now, but I want this to go out, say, Monday morning at, let's say, 9:30 a.m. We can get even more specific. We don't have to use this little clock selector. We can just type a time. So if we wanted to go out at 9:35 a.m. instead. If you're trying to be super precise about it, keep in mind there is a little bit of lag time. There's going to be a slightly different time. So like when the email, it's queued for delivery at 9:35, but if someone is receiving that email, in their inbox, it might take a couple minutes to get to them. So it's not going to be incredibly precise as the time that it gets to their inbox. Let's see. Oh, there was a question in the chat. I'll go ahead and answer this now because it's applicable to what we're talking about. For the from email address, someone was saying, should they whitelist this email address? So this shouldn't matter. When it comes to whitelisting, the Devin at nigp.org right here, they shouldn't have to whitelist that. If they are having trouble receiving our emails, they might want to whitelist at clubexpress.com. That tag, their email provider should be able to whitelist that. Usually the only people who have trouble receiving Club Express emails are people with either .edu or .gov email addresses, because those are all privately controlled. And sometimes their email filters are a little bit more stringent. If someone is using a, more common email address, Gmail, AOL, Yahoo, Hotmail, Outlook, any of those, we've put a ton of work into making sure that all of those are deliverable and receivable. So I think at the moment, there shouldn't be any issues whitelisting unless you are on a private email server, again, like those .gov or .edu emails, or if you have your own like manual email hosting, which most people don't. Moving on, we've got our subject and our BCC and CC lines. Subject is required. You have to fill it in, but that's, everyone knows how to subject an email. We would just say, whatever subject is the topic of our email. For the CC and BCC lines, these are not required, and I usually leave them blank. This is if you just need to manually add an email address here, but we're going to control who the email is going to with our distribution list we're setting up later. Usually the BCC would get used if you want to ensure that someone is having visibility on this email. So if we are wanting to say CC our board so that all of our members who get this email are seeing that, yes, in fact, the board got this email and we know it. So you could do it that way so that people are seeing that there is visibility from us. Um, for BCC, that is really only used if you're sending this email to someone who is uh, not within your organization. So if you're sending it to, uh, say, someone who is not in your contact list, you can add additional email there. But again, for the most part, we're controlling who this email is going to with our distribution list later on. For content, HTML or plain text, I would say always leave it as HTML. HTML is going to let your email contain things like fonts and colors and images and links. If you do plain text, it's just that. It's just text, no fancy images, no colors, no font controls, anything like that. So you always want to leave it as HTML. And then finally, we get these three little checkbox here. And this is another place that I have a very particular recommendation here. So you've got the set urgent flag. I highly recommend against using the urgent flag. If you send a lot of urgent emails, that is a really fast way for automated systems to start filtering your emails out. Um, so I need this takes us kind of back to our email deliverability. Those of you who have more stringent email servers, if you're being controlled by like a state government email server or something like that, a lot of them will have filters set up that say, hey, if I get 2 or 3 urgent emails within the same month, block that. It's probably spam. So I would say try to only use the urgent flag once or twice a year is kind of my recommendation. You should only really use it if it is truly urgent. On the flip side of that, when we move over to track opens, this is where we can go and we can track who has opened this email. So when we send this out to our members, it'll actually add a little HTML tag to the email. And when someone opens it, it reports back to our email server that it has been opened. I usually turn this on. It doesn't hurt to have it in the email. The only note about tracking opens is that I highly recommend that you take it with a grain of salt, those reports. It's about 95 to 98% accurate. The reason for that like 2 to 5% variance is that if someone is checking their email on often specifically iPhones, there are privacy settings that iPhone users can turn on that will stop us from being able to receive information about whether they've opened it or not. So there is occasionally a chance where someone will open or read an email, but because it doesn't report back to us, our reports will show that they have not opened it. The flip side of that, though, is if our reports say someone has opened it, that is virtually 100% accurate. So if it says someone opened the email, they opened that email. So you can be pretty confident in that. But that's a really good way to track and see, if your members are opening your emails. You can see it'll also give you things like percentages. So you can say, hey, 30% of our, members opened the email. And that's a pretty, close approximation to how much your email has been opened. Also usefully, if you do turn on, you'll note that when I turned that on, I got an extra little line here. When we are tracking opens, we have an additional option to resend that email. This is what I use. So if I have an urgent email that I really need people to see, instead of setting the urgent flag, I will usually do the resend email option. And what this will do is it will track if someone has opened it, and anyone who is on the report as having not opened it will receive the email again a number of days after we send it. So if you leave it as 0, then it's not going to send a copy of the email again. But if we set this to anything other than 0, 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, I usually do 2 or 3 days for my emails. This will automatically resend the email to everyone who is on the report as having not opened it. As I said before, this does run the risk of sending the email twice to someone who opened it on an iPhone. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. People can get an email twice. They usually just delete it. It's not a big deal. I have not really seen anyone complain about that. So this will let you kind of like make sure that your emails are getting visibility. So if someone misses it the first time it comes through, they accidentally delete it or just didn't check their email, you can give them that notification once again. So you can kind of double up on sending that email without having to go through the process of copying the email and hitting send again. It'll just do it for you. It'll just resend it again. And then finally, the last item in our basic email information. This is another checkbox I usually turn on. Turning it on doesn't mean you have to use it. It just means it gives you the option. So I almost always turn it on whether I use it or not. This is the personalization allowed option. This will let us customize our email with people's information, most commonly someone's name. So instead of saying hello members, you can say, hello Ronnie, hello Devin, hello Jim, hello Doug. Everyone can get a customized email without you having to send everyone their own individual email. So it'll just auto fill in their information. So turning that on will allow us to do that. And when we're building our body, I'll show us how we use that. So that is our basic information. We can go ahead and save these settings. And you'll see now that I've configured my basic information, I get a green check mark. And I can click this little drop down to get a little summary of the basic information as I configured it. And then we move on to our next item, which is our distribution list. So who is this email going to? When we click on edit distribution list, we are presented with one of two options. We have our saved distribution list. You can tell that I've been in here before because I always make a birthday list, and I'll show you why in a second. Saved distribution lists, these are lists that we've used before in the past, and we can save them for reuse to save ourselves time. For today's example, I'm going to go through the process of creating a new list. So this is how we would go in and say, hey, I have a specific group of people in mind that I need to send this email to. When we choose the second option, it will display this little pop-up here where we can choose who this email is going to, and we can specify further in with extra details. The to list, I will not go through every single item because there is just too much to cover in a training. This is a place where I recommend, if you have time on your website, go in and just kind of read through this list. But there are some kind of useful items I will show off and a couple tricks to help you find what you're looking for. So when we click this drop down, this is the little to address, and we can select who this is going to. We can select all of our members, active members, member by certain status, tons of options. I always like to point out, you can type in this box. So sure, there's a lot of lists and we can go and click on what we're looking for. But more importantly, we can say, hey, if I want to send it to all of my members, we can just start typing and hopefully it'll come up with something. So I'll say all. And just typing all, it will show me all of the options that include all. Or we can say, I'm going to send it to my active members, and I can say active, or I can type in the word members. And it will show me all of the options for sending that include that information. You'll notice this isn't a list of names. It's not a list of email addresses. It's a list of criteria. So I can say, I want to say, let's send it to active members in a specific subgroup. And then we can see a list of subgroups. But actually, I'm going to say, let's actually switch that to members. We'll say members by status, active. Because this is the top level club for NIGP, we're going to have the subgroup option. I don't think most of you who are dealing with this will have the added complexity of subgroups. So you will just not see the subgroup selection here at all. So you can, for the most part, ignore that. But we'll say, members by status, active. So this is going to go to all of my active members. And I can then just hit the add button. And add means I'm adding these people to this distribution list. I can repeat that process as many times as I want to make this list as complex as I want. So I don't have to just say this email is just going to active members. I can also say, let's say I want it to go to non-members. There's an option for all non-members. So there's all non-members. And then I can hit add again. And I can keep adding criteria to this email. So now it's going to go to all of my active members and all of my non-members. And I can repeat that process as many times as I want. There is also an exclude option. So if I say, let's say one member selected from the database, once I select that option, a few of these will give us extra criteria to select. So we'll say member not selected, and I can select one person at a time. And this time I'll say Ronnie, and I will exclude. So if I was, again, we saw this earlier, I always use this as an example. Let's say I'm throwing a birthday party for Ronnie, but it's a surprise party. I want to send an email to everyone letting us know that it's happening, but I want to exclude Ronnie from the list. It will build this list out and then it will check for Ronnie's email and take it off of the list. So you can exclude, and that doesn't just mean for one person, you can actually exclude entire groups of people. So let's say, all members by status, I want to exclude my dropped members. So now I'm excluding all of my drop members. So if I'm sending it to an entire list that says, hey, all members, but I don't want to include my dropped, or I don't want to include my expired, or something like that. There's a lot of kind of creativity you can put into this. There are usually questions that come up about how this functions. What it does is when the email is sent, it checks the database for all of the emails that match any of this criteria, and it will then include them. When you reuse this list in the future, it will check that list again in the future. So if I save this list right now, and let's say I wanted to save it as a predefined list, I could save the criteria, but it's not saving the email addresses. So if I send an email to all of my active members today and then reuse that list 6 months from now, my list of active members might be different 6 months from now. And that new email using that list will reflect that. So you don't have to worry about it, not updating. Every time an email gets sent out, it rechecks the list and makes sure that it is using up-to-date information based on this criteria. Additionally, if there are people that show up on both lists. So let's say there is someone who is listed as a non-member, but they're also listed as an active member, so they show up in both of these. Or maybe we say, all of our members, and we also want to send it to all of our board members. Obviously, there would be people that would show up on that list twice. If someone is on the list twice, it does not send them the email 2 times. What it does is as the email is getting sent out, it sees the email twice and it says, hey, that's a duplicate. We're not going to send it multiple times. So you don't have to worry about sending someone, 5 copies of an email if you have a complicated email list. So you can rest easy on that. You can build this as complex as you want, and everyone is either only going to get it once, or if you're excluding them, they won't get it at all. If we are saving the list, we could we could just give it a name here. We'll say, birthday 2, because this is the second time I'm creating a birthday list, and I'll save it. And then the next time I come to build an email, when I click on that distribution list option, if we choose the saved option, now we have both of those. So all we have to do is choose the little save option here and give it a name. And then from that point on, it'll show up as one of our saved options to reuse. If you ever end up with too many saved options or repeats, you can always go back to that email page we were on before where that search was. And in the configure is a place where you can go and either manage or delete your saved distribution list. So if this list gets too long or it's cluttered up or there's just a list that you're not going to use anymore, you can always go and remove it from there. So now that we have a distribution list, we can also click this little drop down to get a preview of who it's going to. You can see this email is going to be sent to 9,000 people because we're sending it to the entirety of NIGP. I will not be sending this email, don't worry. You'll also see the expected non-functional. So you'll have the to be sent, and that's always a great, you want that to be nice and tall. There's also invalid, not functional, and members refusing. Invalid would mean there's some sort of typo in their email address. So they missed the dot in the .com, or they didn't put in the @ sign or something like that. There is some reason why that email address is not working. I will show reports a little bit later where you can actually go and see the list of your members with some sort of non-working email address. Not functional. These are email addresses that we have tried to send to and we have gotten bounce backs. We don't put them on the non-functional list after one bounce back. We try to send the email 3 times. And if we get 3 bounce backs in a row, we will then add them to the not functional list and we won't try to send it again. Because if we try to send, hundreds of emails to non-functional email addresses, it's a really quick way to get marked as spam and stop getting it delivered. But again, this will show up on our list that we'll look up later so we can go in and fix these email addresses. Finally, there's also members refusing. So we, as an email provider, have to offer the option to unsubscribe from emails. So there's an option at the bottom of the email where they can say, I do not want to receive emails from this organization anymore. And if they select that, we do have to honor it. And at that point, we would stop sending them emails. There are a couple exceptions to that. So if they incur some sort of transaction, financial based emails are allowed to bypass anyone who chooses to refuse emails. So they will still get things like their receipts from making payments on your website, like renewing their membership or something. There is also a way to turn that off, so you can let your members know either in person that they can go into their member profile, and that's just a toggle. So if they accidentally say unsubscribe once, it's not permanent. They can go in and undo it in their privacy page in their email or in their member profile. Again, that's just up here in the upper right corner. They would select their name and go to profile. And under the privacy tab, there will be an option for them to quote unquote resubscribe or say, I do want to receive these emails instead of refusing those emails. But that is our distribution list option. That is how we can decide who this email is going to. And now that we've set those two things up, we can move on to the body of our email. The way our email body works is it's just a list of elements that you can add. So you'll see we've got this kind of right-hand side out here where we've got three tabs. We've got elements, templates, which I'll talk about in just a few minutes, and then element styles where we can style the elements themselves. For the elements, we can just select them. For the most basic of emails, I just need to distribute some information to my members. If we're just looking to send some words to people, we can choose this very first option. And that's why we put it in the upper left. So it's the first one you see. It's just a column of text. If we click and drag this over and let go, it'll add the element one column text. And then to edit an element, we simply click on the pencil icon here. And then we'll open up our text editor and we can start putting content in our email where we can say, hello, members. This is an email. And we can, put in the rest of our body of our email there. And we can copy that to make it look like a real email. There we go. And then we can say, thanks, Devin. And that's, the most basic of emails. I just want to say, hi, here's some information. Thank you, Devin. Bye. And we can save. And now we are presented with kind of the basic preview of that email. And we could stop there. That is a valid email. We could say ready for delivery down here. And if we hit ready for delivery, depending on whether or not we set it for now or later in the basics. So again, remember up here in our basics, we aren't sending it now. We're sending it on Monday at 9:35. So if we were to say ready for delivery, it would schedule it for 9:35 on Monday. It would not send it immediately. But if we wanted to make this a little bit more fancy, because we are using that HTML option in our basics, we can come in here and we can get a little bit fancier with this email. We can do things like stylizing it. So if we come over to the right-hand side and say element style, we could select an element. You'll see it'll turn blue to let us know that we've selected it. And you'll see a number of style options that we can play around with here. We can play around with the background colors. We could say, I want a nice light blue background. We can select a light blue. And then anytime we make a change, we do need to come down here and hit apply to apply it. And now you'll see that we have this little light blue background to this element. Now it is to each element. So we could have other elements in here with different background colors. We can come and select element style again. We can add borders. We can change the font. We can change the general font size. And this will apply to everything in this element. We can also gussy up our email. If we click the pencil again here, we can also do font controls from here. So you'll see you've got all the standard kind of, if we wanted to give this a bit of a heading style, we've got our predefined styles that you can apply here. You've got your standard font control and font sizes. Most of this is familiar alignment tools, font color, bold, italics, underline, background color. You can background, just some certain words if you want to, call something out. Ones that are a little bit more, not necessarily advanced, but specific to Club Express, I like to point out this icon here, this little globe with a chain link. You can insert links into the text. So if we say, I want to highlight this word email right here, I can click on this chain link option. And this is our little build a link pop-up. And those of you who've used Club Express for a few years probably are very familiar with the build a link option. Those of you who are newish are probably going to become very familiar with it, because this little build a link pop-up, this right here, is all over Club Express. You'll see it on the homepage. You'll see it in events. This is the same build a link tool that we use everywhere. And this is just how we build a hyperlink in anything. So we can add a link into our text and we can say, I want this to go to a number of places. When we're building a link, we answer two questions. Where is this link going? And what does this link look like? So where is it going? Most of these options are places on your website. So your own blog, your an email address. You can point to a photo album or a custom page or a module. You can point to your calendar, anything like that. If you want to send it to a specific URL, you do have the option to say, I want to point it to an external page. And that would be a page not on your website, but somewhere else. So we could say external page. And for example, I always just do google.com. And then for the link properties, this is what this link is going to look like. It'll autofill google.com for me. And then we get a couple options. We can have it look like text, which will be that kind of quintessential blue text with an underline that lets everyone know, hey, I can click on that, like you see in Wikipedia all the time. Then you also have the option to make it a button. When it comes to links and emails, the button will look one way on the website. I usually recommend against sending buttons and emails because a lot of email providers have their own code for how they handle buttons. And so it'll never look the same. It'll look different on AOL, it'll look different on Yahoo, it'll look different on Gmail. Buttons are a tricky thing. They see the word button in our code and they say, I'm going to change that. So I usually am a little bit hesitant with button. I usually prefer text. Or if you have a certain image that you want to be linked, you can actually make an image link and you can upload an image from your computer or select an image that's already on your website. So you could have, any of these be a link that when they click on that image, it takes them to that link. But for now, I'm going to have it be a text link. I will say it'll open in a new window. That just means kind of like new tab when someone clicks on it. If you say same window, then it'll open from the page that they're currently on. If it's an external link, you usually want that to be new window. You have the option to track link clicks. If you turn that on, then anytime someone clicks this link, it'll report it back to us. And we have a separate module in the control panel called link tracking, where you can see, hey, how many people click this link? It doesn't tell you who. It just tracks that the link has been clicked. So you can see that it's been clicked 5 times or 500 times. For the most part, I usually don't turn that on unless it's like a big link, like a link to our conference, and we want to see how many people are looking at that page. We could track that kind of link. I will save, and now we'll see I've inserted google.com as a link. And if I save this, you'll see there's google.com. Clicking on it takes me to Google. If we edit this once again, I'll show you one more interesting tool that we have, which is the option to personalize. So if you'll remember back on the basic info, there was that checkbox that said personalization allowed. The way we personalize an email, so instead of saying hello members, we can come in here and I can remove members and we can select a tag. The most commonly used tag by a country mile is first name. That is the one that is used far more than any other. We can select first name. We can put our cursor where we want first name to go and then hit insert tag. And now it'll fill in with squiggle, squiggle, first name, squiggle, squiggle. Whenever this email gets sent out, for everyone who is receiving it, it will replace this tag right here with their name. So when it gets to my inbox, it'll say, hello, Devin. When it gets to Ronnie's inbox, it'll say, hello, Ronnie. When it gets to Doug's email inbox, it'll say, hello, Doug. It'll do that for every person this email goes to. It'll grab the name from their profile or from their account, and it will replace it. Keep in mind, if you are manually CCing or BCCing someone, it will just say hello first name because we don't know what their actual first name is. So you always want to keep track of that. So we can save that, and now it says hello first name. You can do other things with the personalization option. So you probably saw there's a big old drop down, so we can do things like expiration date. If you want to let your members know when they're going to expire, we can insert this expiration date option, and that will get replaced with their expiration date. You can do things like address, spouse name, nickname. There's a ton of options here, but by and large, first name is the one that gets used far more than any other. One more thing we can do to make our email a little bit more fancy is we can actually include other elements. So we can come over here and we can say, I don't just want a text box, I want an image at the top of my email. So I can grab an image element and we can actually just drop as many elements as we want in here. Sometimes it'll drop to the bottom. You can just grab it and drag it back to the top. It's something we're working on, but for now, you can always just grab this little dotted line icon on the top and move them around that way. Um, for our image, this is going to have this little pencil icon to edit it again, but the edit's going to look slightly different from the text. We'll have the option to insert a photo or insert image. I usually jump straight to image because that's going to pull from our website images, whereas photos is going to pull from photo albums. So that would include things like member uploaded photo albums or other things like that. Images is going to contain a lot more. And this is also the one you would select if you have an image on your computer that you want to upload. So if you have an image that's not already on your website, insert image is the one you want to use. And we can come in here and we can just find whatever image, fits us best. Let's say that's a nice little banner. We can select that and it'll insert and that will live at the top of our email. So we can kind of insert whatever image we want. And now the email will look like this image. It could be a logo or something like that. And then the body of our email. And we can drag and drop as many of these. Um, the first 10 options here are all combinations of image and text. So one column text, two column text. The rest of these that aren't just an image or just text are all just pre-stitched together collections of text and image. So as a great example, let's say I wanted an image and text. This hero section option is the same thing that we just did, except for it's already stitched together. So hero section, if we put it at the top, it is an image section on top of a text section. So we could repeat this with just the hero section alone. We wouldn't need to set two elements. So again, this edits the same way. We could insert an image. There it is. And then we could insert the same text we did before. We get the same exact editor. It's just stitched together already for you of an image stuck to the top of some text. And the same is true for the rest of these. Two column text. This is two 50-50 columns of text. So you get two separate text box with a separation in the middle. And that holds true for the first 10 items on this list. 3 column text, 3 column image. We get 3 columns of image, 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 text, text, text. So you can kind of play around with stylizing this as much as you want. And again, all the first 10 of these are all just groups of images and text. The last 5 are slightly unique. So we get a divider and we can put in just that, a horizontal line that will separate our content. So we can say, I want a divider in between this. And it's just a way to visually separate your content. Link button. This is one I don't use a whole lot because it is the same thing that we were doing before with building a link, except for it's just an entire element of just a link. So this will let us build a button or a link and we get this same build a link pop-up, but that means this whole element is just that link. Most times if I'm wanting to link to something, I will instead use a text element like I did up here and just put the link inside that text element. So I usually avoid using just the link option. If I want to get rid of an element, I can just click the trash can and choose to delete. Then we also have these last 3, social media. If you have in your control panel your social media icons configured, I don't think this website does. It doesn't. So it'll say no social networks were defined. There's a place in your control panel called social networking. And all you have to do is say, hey, our group has a Facebook. Here's a link to that Facebook. Our group has Twitter and or X, whichever one you want to call it. You would put a link to it and it'll show up here. So all of your social medias that you build in, this will just automatically populate little buttons. Most times, if you have those configured, I just drop my social media links at the bottom of my email. That way, when someone gets to the bottom of the email, they say, oh, look, there's their Facebook page. There's their, LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever they want to link to. And those will just populate here. There's no real editing. You can choose to switch between the sizes. So you can make the icons small, medium, or large, and you can align them to the left, middle, right. But that's the only configuration you get. Otherwise, it's just controlled by what social media icons or what social media links you configured in your control panel. Last 2, I'm going to circle back to HTML. I'm going to jump over that one. Let's jump to file. So those of you who have worked in email blasting for a long time will probably be familiar with the fact that if you send email attachments to 1,000 people, you will get marked as spam almost immediately because email providers are so wary of viruses. They're very hesitant to deliver bulk email attachments. The way we kind of get around it is the similar way that Google gets around it. Instead of actually attaching the file to the email that is sent out, we have a way to build what we would call like a fancy link. So when we want to attach a file, We can just drop this down here. And this is going to work very similar to the way our links work. But when we click the pencil for a file link, we get two options. We can attach a new document, or we can attach a document already in our document library. So this is going to have a direct line into our website's document library. We have some tutorial videos about how to manage your document library, but the long and short of it is you can put documents on your website, and then you can either link directly to those documents. So if I say attach an existing document, this will let me browse my website and I can go find, there's our test document, and we can just save that. And now when we send this email out, there's going to be this little attachment at the bottom of the email that they can click on. It should also have, there it goes. It took a second to populate. It should have a little cloud download icon that'll let people know. Most people are familiar with the cloud arrow down iconography, and they'll say, oh, that means I can download a link. They click on it, and the file will download to their computer instead of already being attached to the email. Similarly, we can choose to attach a new document, and this will do essentially the same thing, except for the difference is we're going to upload a document from our computer, and it will actually insert the document into our document library and then immediately attach it from the document library. So keep in mind when you are doing this option, you are also adding a document to your document library. So if it's already in your document library, you want to do it that way. If it needs to go in your document library, you would select it this way. There is not a way to attach a document without adding it to your website. It has to be on your website in your document library in order for it to be a download option. And then the last element we have is this HTML element. When we grab this and drag this over, this is one I usually avoid. It works very similar to our text option. So we can come in here and we can just type text. It works mostly the same way. We can even insert tags. You'll notice the controls are mostly the same. The big difference is that, let's say if I insert a link really quickly, I'm going to link to, this custom page. We'll call it a button, save. So I've just added a button. The big difference with the HTML one is we have the option down here in the bottom left to switch to HTML. And we can actually edit the content by manually manipulating the code here. So we can say, hey, if I want to change the link, I can come in here and manually alter the URL. I can see this as code. You are able to get kind of advanced with this, but when it comes to sending really HTML powerful emails, we usually recommend caution. Also, keep in mind, if you're having trouble with an email being sent out, if you have coded it or made some sort of manipulation to the HTML, we do not support, Club Express itself does not support custom HTML. So if you're using the HTML element, we won't be able to support that because we're not going to do code reviews for
This is why
our
you
partners.
have friends, buddy.
um, so yeah, you come in here and you can get as advanced as you want, but just keep in mind, I usually steer clear of that if I don't know HTML, like the back of my hand. Finally, once we have the body of an email we like, we can scroll down here to our save options. We have a number of save options. If you are spending a long time on an email, I would say make sure to save and continue every once in a while. It's not going to kick you out. It's not going to do anything. But because this is an online web builder, if you were to make a bunch of changes and then your internet goes out, you would lose those changes because it's saving it cached on your computer. If you every 10 to 15 minutes come down here and hit save and continue, that just makes sure that you're not going to lose your work. Save and close does the same thing, except for instead of continuing, it just takes you back to your editor. And you can see there's the email we've been working on. I can click this pencil right here to get back into it. Go to the bottom. There's also save as template. We can save the body of our email as a template. We can say, hey, I really like this layout that I've made. I'm going to save the entire body as a template. And I'll say this is example. Save. And now that I've saved it as a template, this middle option up here, there's example. And when I drag this option into my body, I won't do it here because it would become a mess. But if I add a new email really quickly, template, example, bam, there's the same body I had before. So you can build a nice body for a newsletter or something, and then just reuse it over and over. And then the last two, we have send tests. I always recommend hitting send test. This will let you send a test version of your email to yourself or to other board members for them to review the email before it gets sent out. And you would just hit send test here. If you need to send it to more than 4 addresses, you can send tests and then hit it again and send as many tests as you want. And it'll just send a copy of the email to your inbox before you send it to everyone else. And then finally, when you're done, you can come in here and hit ready for delivery, and that will either send the email immediately if it is a send now option, or it will queue it for delivery. So let's close out of this one. Let's go back to the one we were working on. And we can say ready for delivery. It's blue because we have our other two options filled in. And it would queue it for delivery. And then when the time comes, it would be automatically sent out to our members. So that's email. That's front to back. That's how you send an email. Once the email goes out, there's a few extra things. So on this page here, you'll see there's some icons. The pencil icon will take you back in to edit the email. You can always edit an email until it is sent. So even if it's scheduled for a future time, you can always come back and make changes to that scheduled email. Make sure if you edit an email that is scheduled to go out, you want to hit ready for delivery again. If you edit it and then save, it'll go back into draft and it won't get sent. So like right now, you'll notice this email is in draft mode and this is not going to get sent at this time, even though it's scheduled for this time. Because it's in draft, it's not going to get sent. If I don't hit ready for delivery, it'll stay in draft and it won't get sent. And then out to the right hand side, you'll see a few options. You'll see this little bar graph. This will show you your email results. This is still in draft, so I don't have any results, but it would show you things like, how many people it was sent to. If you turned that track opens on, it'll show you how many people have opened your email, so on and so forth from there. There's also a clipboard icon to copy an email. So you can say, hey, I really liked that email I sent last month. I want to send it mostly unchanged, but I want to, maybe tweak one or two things. You can copy it and it will just create a copy of that email. And you can go in and start playing around with the copy. The copy will be in draft, so you then have to go in and say ready for delivery. But you can use that clipboard icon to make a copy of the entire email. It'll copy everything from the basics to the distribution list to the body. The eyeball icon, you won't be able to see when I click on this because it's going to open an extra window, but it'll open the email in another window for you to preview what it looks like for members. So that's kind of like sending a test. It'll just open in another window. And then the chain link here, that is your link tracking. So if you have any links in there that you turned on link tracking, this will let you track the links that are being sent in that email. Again, this will only work if you have links in there that you have turned on for link tracking, like we talked about a few minutes ago. And then lastly, there's the little trash can icon where we can come in here and we can delete an email. So we can say, hey, I don't like this copy. I'm not going to use it. I can delete it. It'll say, are you sure? And we'll say, yes, I don't need that copy. And it'll delete it from the list. You cannot delete sent emails. Once it is sent, you can archive it though. So you'll see this option right here that says include archived emails. Archiving it is like deleting it, disappears from the list, but you can always go back and find it. All right. That's most of what I want to cover in emails. I will point out really quickly. So I talked about the configure option up at the beginning. There's a couple things I will point out. Saved distribution lists. This is where you would go to edit and remove your saved list. So I can say there's my second birthday list. I don't actually need it. I will delete it. So now we're back down to just one birthday list. And then similarly, we can also edit our templates here. Come in and say, there's all of our templates. We can say there's 2 examples. You'll see there's some templates in here that don't show up. Those are our system templates that you can use as a jumping off point to create your own. But for the most part, you're looking for the ones that are type club. Those are the ones that are that have been created by admins on your website, and you can either edit them or delete them or make copies of them or preview them. There's a number of options you can do on this page, but this is where you can come and manage those templates as you make them. Are there any major questions before I move on to our system emails?
Devin, we have some questions, but I'll email them to you and we can provide answers afterwards. So,
okay. Well, let's move on to system emails. This one should be pretty easy given the context of what we just went through. It's mainly going to work roughly the same way. It's just a lot more simplified. If we come over to our control panel And then we're still in the communications tab. Down here under setup, there is a page called system emails. Now, I am a system admin for Club Express, so I'm going to see a few more here than you will when you look at it. But when we look at this list, this is going to be a huge long list of tons of emails, and each of them is going to have a little pencil and a gear, wrench icon, and then a little email envelope. When we look at this list, there's tons and tons of emails here. And what this is a list of all of the automated emails that Club Express sends to your members. And it'll tell you the name and subject of the email. And then it'll tell you the situation in which that email will go out in gray below. So for example, here, I always like to point out our renewal notices. We can send up to 3 renewal notices depending on your site's configuration. And it'll say, hey, this alerts the member that they need to renew their membership. This is the first notice they receive. We can come in here and we can take a look at these emails, but we can also manipulate them. So if we come over to the right-hand side over here, clicking on the pencil will let us customize the email. So each of these emails that has a pencil, we can come in here and we can actually manage this email. And you'll see this is filled with tags. So you'll see dear member first name. That is going to be automatically replaced by the person's first name when they receive the email. Your membership in club name will expire, expiration date, so on and so forth. And it'll kind of give you this entire email. If there are emails that you want to customize, you want them to look a little bit friendlier or something, you can come in here and you can change this to your will. You can say, instead of dear, we can say hello. Your membership will expire on, expiration date. We hope, maybe hope is the wrong word. You can come in here and you can change and remove and tweak all of this. You can add lines if you want to. The only thing I'll say about when you're editing system emails, most of these tags you want to make sure to leave alone. Especially if it is a functional tab to the relation of the email. So we can see this is our renewal notice. So the important things about our renewal notice is the date of their expiration, the link to renew. We want to leave those things alone. But you can kind of use a little bit of context clues to figure out where you can change things. So for example, if you have any questions about it, reach out to your membership director. And this is going to pull the contact information for your membership director. Let's say maybe we don't want them reaching out to the membership director. We have someone else. We could come in here and we could absolutely remove these tags. And we can say, instead of reaching out to the membership director, we want you to reach out to, contact Jim. And we can say, email jim@gmail.com. Phone number, numbers. We can manually replace certain things. Obviously, this isn't going to fundamentally change the information about their renewal notice. We're just manually replacing some of these tags with manual information. That does mean, if Jim leaves this position, we need to make sure to come back to this email and replace Jim with someone else. But for now, as an example, I'll go ahead and save this. If we save this, it's going to change the way this email works from now on. We hit the save option, and now we've replaced it with Jim. Once we make a change to a system email, you'll see this little green check mark, and that lets us know that this email has been customized. Now that it's been customized, you'll also see this little trash can icon. The trash can icon here does not delete the email. What it does is it removes your customization. So we can say, hey, I don't want this email to go to Jim anymore. Or, let's say I accidentally messed up this email. Whoops daisies, I deleted everything and I saved it. I really messed up my email because I deleted, a whole bunch of content from that email. I can always hit this trash can icon and it will set it back to the bog standard. So now I can come back down to my renewal. Scroll. There you go. Renewal notice 1. Now there's no green check mark. And when I click on the pencil, it is back to the original email that we have. So this is one place, feel free to customize. And if you get, some sort of error, you're never going to break this. You can always set it back to how it started, and then you can pick up again. Next, there's also the wrench icon, which will change the configuration of the email. We can change the subject. So by default, it's the, renewal notice, but we can say, renewal reminder. And we can change that who the address comes from. The emails that are in your system emails will always be coming from your organization's email address. So in your control panel, under your organization tab, there's a place that says name and description where you can fill in your organization's email address and contact info. That is the default from address. But if we want to override, say we want our renewal reminders to come from, Jim at Gmail. Just like with our emails that we were working on before, we can override who that email is coming from. So I want this to come from Jim. We can also change the reply to. So when someone replies to it, I want it to go to Jane at Gmail. So even though it looks like it's coming from Jim, when they hit reply, it's going to go to Jane. And then finally, we can also track the open. So as of when we check this and save, now we can see it's coming from Jim. We can see there's a little icon that lets us know that we've customized the configuration. And now that we've turned on tracking, we get these little bars here. And we can come in here and we can say, hey, all of the people that opened this email from, the 4th through today, I want to search. Right now there's none because I only just turned it on. Keep in mind, it'll only start tracking when you check that box and hit save. So it's not going to track anything back in time. It'll only start tracking when you check that. And then from that point on, anytime someone opens that email, it'll have that HTML in it to let us know that it has been opened. And then the last thing here is the little envelope icon. So if you are customizing your email and you want to see what it looks like in your inbox, this is that same thing as the send tests that we did before in our other email. We can say, send this to me. I want to send it to Devin at, clubexpress.com. I can say send test. And now here in a minute, I will get a copy of that email in my inbox. Once again, we still have the trash can icon, so it may not have been customized, but we did change things in our configuration. If we hit the trash can icon again, it'll set it back to all the configuration will also get wiped out. So it's back to the basic configuration, the basic email. And that's true for everything here. There are tons of emails. I could not in an hour could I go through each and every one of these emails. For the most part, I recommend that you leave these as they are. But, things like renewal notices, those are usually ones that are good to customize. Emails that your members are getting very regularly. Additionally, like if you have events very regularly, you might want to come to this page and use the Control F search function. So if you hit Control and F, you'll see down here, we can search for event. And we can go and search through all of our emails that are related to events. We can see there's all of our event related emails. So we can come through and say, hey, I want my, event creation email or my event cancellation email or my event, whatever event related emails I may want to customize. So you can kind of search around on this page for what you're looking for, but I always try to, caution people, don't get overwhelmed with, well, every email needs to be perfectly customized. We've put a lot of Club Express has put a lot of work into making sure that the emails are informational, but also generic enough that most people can get what they need out of it without you having to customize it. So you should really only customize the emails that are regularly being sent to all of your members. That's pretty much all there is to system emails. There's not a whole lot to it. I will, if you'll let me, I'll go a few minutes over and do a quick bit on the news articles really quickly. So if we go back to our control panel, one last thing we'll talk about today is news articles. So we've talked about emailing, and that's a way to get information out to our members' email inbox. If we want information for our members to see on the website instead of in their inbox, or maybe both, we can do these in tandem. We can put the similar information in a news article. So this is where we can go and plug in a little kind of like a blog, kind of like just a way for us to get information out there to our members. We can manage our own categories, but for the most part, we can just get started by saying add article. Similar to emails, we just say add article. We can select a category. Again, we're just going to call this news. This is just like the basic info of an email. So all the same stuff here. Headline would be like our subject, newsletter. We can set a date that we want it to show up. So by default, it'll be today. And then we will also have the date that it expires. If we leave the expiration date blank, then it'll be active forever. But if we say, hey, this information is only pertinent because it's about our event and the event ends, at the end of this month, then we can have it disappear at the end of the month because we don't want it to show up anymore. We can set an author. In this case, we'll say Devin. We can also add a summary. A summary is required. So we can say, update about conference. This is just a short summary. This is going to appear on the kind of like email or the news landing page. It is not the article itself. We will actually configure that somewhere else. For tags, I usually leave that blank. Tags is not a tool that I use personally very often. For visibility, you can decide if this is visible to everyone or visible to just members. You can also hide it if you need it to not show up just yet, or if you need to take down an article, you can switch it to hidden. But for the most part, it's usually either members or everyone. And then we have a few options. We can show it on the main news page. So when people click on the news module, will this pop up on that page? Usually I say yes. Show active date. So do you want people to see the date that it became active? Maybe you want it to, look like it's always been there or something. You can turn that off and it won't show the active date. And then finally, do you want to show the author? So, I wrote it, but maybe you don't want to share exactly who wrote it. You can show the author, or you can turn off showing the author. For share image, I usually leave that blank. That's only if you're sharing this link to social media. Most times I'm fine with the share image just being the standard, my club logo image. So I will save that option. And now I have an article. We can see there's newsletter. You can say who made it, Devin, category news. So we've made the article, but we haven't actually written the article yet. So now that we've created it, we give a few icons out on the right-hand side. The pencil, just like with our emails, is how we will go in and actually edit the content of this article. The wrench icon here is how we get back to that configuration page. So we can come back in here, we can change our summary, we can come back and change it to members only. All of that stuff is always editable here. If we want to extend this article, we can come and say, actually, now I want it to expire, at the first week of July. We can come back and change those things. But the article itself, we create using this pencil icon, and we get this pop-up, and you'll probably recognize this from the website editor or your event formatted description, or you'll recognize it from the email HTML editor. It's that same tool. We can come in here and we can just start typing. We can start creating content. For the most part, this works similarly to the text function that you were working with in your email. There's a couple extra options that you get. So again, this is just text. You can type all you would like. A couple extra functions that you're going to get over your normal text. You have the option to, once again, insert links. But unlike the text in the emails, you can also insert images inside the text here. So we can come in here and we can say, I want an image. And this is that same image selector we saw before in the email. And there's the same selection of images. We can also click upload new file to pick an image from our computer. But there's that same image we were using before. It's pretty large, so that's a little bit too big. If we want to shrink that image, we could right click on it to change the image properties and shrink it down. Let's make it, 500 pixels wide. There we go. So we've shrunken that image a little bit. We can also do things like embedding videos. So if you have a YouTube embed link, any video like hosting site like YouTube or Vimeo will let you embed videos from their website. So we can actually put a YouTube video. So if we have a related YouTube video, we can choose insert media embed code. And we can just paste the embed code. You don't need to know how to code. All you need to do is copy and paste the little embed section that YouTube will give you, and it will populate a YouTube video inside this article. So that's an extra little bit that you're able to play around with. And then finally, a thing that you can play around with is what we call page rows here. So we can plug in these little dotted line boxes. So you can see we can break our content into either one row, two rows, different rows of different options. So if we select options here, I need to make it a little bit bigger. I've zoomed my screen in so much that it's throwing it off, but we'll get the option to break our content into sections. So you can see I clicked on the 75-25 option down here. And that gives me this little row, and it's going to break my content into 75% wide and 25% wide. And just like before, I can put content inside here. I can type in here. I can put YouTube videos in here. I can put images or links in here. But this will format the page so that whatever's in this left cell will be constrained to 75% wide, and whatever's in this right-hand cell will be constrained to 25% wide. So if I were to put that same image in here, you'll see it's much smaller because it can't extend outside. It'll automatically scale it down to fit inside that row. So a lot of times if I'm having like guest speakers or something, I will do the 2575 and I'll do something like a headshot on the left hand side and then information about that person on the right. Usually looks pretty good doing it that way. But regardless, you can just kind of fill in your content however you like on this page and then save. And then we can either click on the eyeball here to get a little preview of what it looks like. Obviously not the most beautiful article because I'm moving really quickly, but that's a preview of what the article looks like. But to our members, if we head back out of this page, if we want to look at what the news articles looks like to our members, we can always, when we're working with website modules, there's an option to say switch to view mode, and we can take a look at it from the member side. We can click view news articles and we'll see there's that article I was working with. So this is what it'll present like to our members. And they'll say, hey, look, update about our conference newsletter. They can click on this and it'll take them to the article so we can see newsletter. And then there's that content that we put in there. So we can make it look like whatever we want. All right, that's my quick little few minutes on the news articles. It's a pretty easy to use module. Oh yeah, this does appear on your homepage if you want it to. I can cover that very quickly. If we head over to our homepage, we can either edit our homepage by just clicking on this pencil on the right-hand side, or we can go to our control panel website tab of the control panel and click on home. And if we edit our homepage, we can come in here and we can drop content on the homepage. And one of the options to drop. Oh, my
Actually,
page.
Devin, all of the chapters have the news articles as part of their template for their site.
Oh, okay. So you
So,
shouldn't have to turn
they
that on at all. It
shouldn't.
should just happen automatically for you.
Yeah.
So then that's yeah, kind of moot. But you can, yes, you can edit a page, and there's an option called newsfeed, and that will just display your articles. Let's say 100 days. I told Ronnie about this, but I was having computer issues yesterday, so my web pages aren't working exactly like I expect them to. But yeah, so the preview of them will show up on your homepage. Keep in mind when you're putting that preview on your homepage, it's not going to preview the article itself. What you will see on your homepage is that summary. So you want to make sure to make your summary descriptive. That's what's going to be on the homepage, not the article itself for them to click on.
Devin, thank you so much. This has been so informative.
Oh, my pleasure.
So appreciate your time today, everyone. This was recorded, so I will be posting a recording to our YouTube channel. If you would like the link, please reach out. I'm happy to send it to you as well. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Devin.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.